I'm going over a quick news headline from Bloomberg that says Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, has reportedly zeroed her search in for her three top contenders for Vice President. They are Mark Kelly of Arizona, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, and Tim Walz of Minnesota. So I have a few articles that go over kind of each person a little bit. Walz not as much as the other two because I don't know how much really to look into that pick itself. I'll explain why to me it doesn't really make a lot of sense for it to be Walz, but I'll go over him as well. It also mentions that it's likely that Harris picks the Democratic nominee for vice president by August 7th. And I'm recording this as of July 27th, so in just about 10 days we'll know who the Democratic vice presidential nominee will be, or maybe even under 10 days. But nonetheless, that's kind of the only news part from this, that's the news development. So quickly, I'm just going to go over the three contenders. I'm going to go over Walz first. Because Walz, I'm not sure how much of a serious choice he really is. He's the governor of Minnesota, and Minnesota is a state that voted for Joe Biden by 7 points. And Kamala Harris, in the last poll that just came out, actually, I can show you, she's leading in Minnesota by 6 points in the head-to-head versus Donald Trump. In this Fox News poll, and versus Trump in a five-way race with RFK Jr., Cornel West, and Jill Stein involved, Harris is winning here by 6 points. So I'm not really too sure why Harris would need to choose Walz. She's likely going to win the state of Minnesota anyway. And if Harris is losing the election because she loses the state of Minnesota, she's likely in much deeper trouble and has got a lot more problems going on than trying to win Minnesota. The only draw maybe is that Minnesota was surprisingly close in 2016, but 2016 was also 8 years ago, and I'm not sure if Donald Trump didn't even get more than 45% of the vote in 2016 that was that close. In 2020, he got 45.28 and lost by 7. I'm not sure Minnesota electorally makes much of a sense to really have Walz be the candidate. But that being said, this article by USA Today, written by, I'm not sure, but I believe he's a Never Trump Republican. I actually think he does a pretty good job kind of going over Walz here. Walz would be kind of like an uninspired pick, similar to Roy Cooper of North Dakota. Walz, who is 60, so a little bit older, not the biggest deal, but a little bit older. He does have some baggage from the summer of 2020 with the Black Lives Matter riots and such that happened in Minnesota that was on the news for a long time. That definitely wouldn't help him, and that would probably be used by the Trump campaign in a lot of attack ads that would not benefit him. And I also don't know, and kind of just going back to what I was saying, it doesn't really help Harris try to win. It really doesn't. So, personally, I am out on Walz. I don't think it'll be him, but I felt it was worth at least mentioning. Now we go to the real contenders, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania and Mark Kelly of Arizona. I'm going to go over Mark Kelly first because I think I have a little bit more to say about Shapiro. Mark Kelly, who is a senator from Arizona, represents a state that Biden won by only 10,457 votes in 2020, and he has some national name recognition as a former astronaut and as the husband of former Representative Gabby Giffords. He's been a reliable supporter of the Democratic Party, prioritizes while in office. He has occasionally bucked his party, such as in 2023, when he called the influx of undocumented migrants at the border a crisis. And the article closed by mentioning if Kelly, who swiftly endorsed Harris for president last Sunday, was elected to higher office, his seat would likely remain in Democratic hands because Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs would be able to appoint his successor. So that's definitely a big draw. But also Pennsylvania, the governor Shapiro is also a Democrat, so I'm not sure if that's too much of an issue. But Mark Kelly's a very interesting pick, and I mean, you look at 2020, as the article mentioned, Biden won the state by 0.31%. And if you go back to 2016, it's a state that Trump was able to win by 3.5%. So it was very, very close, and it's likely going to be very, very close again. And if we go to the polls really quick, if you look at Trump versus Harris, right now in the polls, Trump is actually up here by about 5 points. So Trump is doing very well here, and he's at 49.7%. So it's not out of reach, but it's getting very close to being out of reach. maybe the thought process of choosing Kelly is that maybe given his described as moderate appeal, that maybe he'll be able to make Arizona competitive again and maybe bring it closer to this 0.31% margin. It's certainly possible. And in my electoral map that I'm going to be showing here, Kamala Harris with Kelly or Shapiro or Walz, if Kelly, is able to come in and help her win Arizona, that would at very least take away one swing state that definitely would be pretty important to Trump's pathway to victory. Trump can win without winning Arizona, but it's going to be harder to do it without Arizona. Especially if Harris were to find a way to win Georgia, then Trump would basically have to win almost every single Rust Belt state to still be able to win. If Michigan were to go blue, that would put Harris on the doorstep. Trump would have to win Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. It gets very, very dicey, and the scenarios get dicey. But if Harris picked Kelly, and Kelly was able to win Arizona for it, that would be a big help, and certainly is a name I would keep an eye on for. But with respect to Kelly, the one that really interests me the most is if Kamala Harris would choose Josh Shapiro, who was elected in 2022 in a very big election win against Doug Mastriano. And Shapiro really, I think, changes the game of the 2024 election for Harris. And make no mistake, Pennsylvania, I think, is the most important swing state of the 2024 election. Michigan's very important, Wisconsin's very important, Georgia's very important, Arizona's very important. Pennsylvania, for me, is very well the most important swing state of the election. Joe Biden won it in 2020 by 1.2% of the vote. Donald Trump won it in 2016 by 0.72% of the vote. It's very, very close. It'll probably be close to that 1% margin again. And both candidates, this state is desperately important for both candidates' pathway to victory. Josh Shapiro, being the governor there, being very well approved of in recent polls, definitely helps Kamala Harris, where it may be enough, just narrowly, to tip the state in Harris's direction. And if that happens, even at nothing else, even if he only helps Harris with Pennsylvania, which I'm not saying he would, I'm just saying hypothetically, if he only helped Harris with Pennsylvania, if he delivered the state for her, that takes away one very crucial state for Trump and Trump's pathway to victory. It also should be noted that Michigan, of the three Rust Belt states, is typically talked about as being the most Democratic of the three. Let's say, hypothetically, Harris is able to win Michigan. That gets her to 260. So now, Trump has 235 and Harris has 260. Trump looks like he's going to win Arizona. I mean, the polls I just showed you certainly suggest that. But what if Harris somehow defies the trends and wins Arizona? Well, that gets her at 271. Harris would win the election without even needing to win the state of Wisconsin. Or, let's do that. Let's say Arizona goes for Trump. But Josh Shapiro's, being the governor of Pennsylvania, is able to help out with the Rust Belt appeal, and Harris is able to win Wisconsin. That gives Harris and Shapiro the election. I think of all the candidates discussed to be Harris's VP, Shapiro should be the one to kind of scare Republicans the most. Because he has decent approval numbers in a very important swing state as governor. And if he was up for re-election today, he would win re-election. I have no doubt about it. So the fact that he's that well approved of, him being on the ticket with Harris would probably help her either win the state of Pennsylvania or get very, very close to winning the state of Pennsylvania. So Trump's campaign probably is hoping they don't choose him. And I definitely think it is a possibility that maybe he doesn't want the job and chooses not to be the VP. But if it's Harris versus Shapiro at very least, it's hard not to immediately give Pennsylvania to Harris, and that is definitely a crucial blow to Trump's campaign. But just going back to the article real quick, I'll read the rest of it because I kind of cut it off halfway through. Shapiro was previously Pennsylvania's Attorney General, so he has that in common with Kamala Harris. He's been floated as a Democrat's potential presidential prospect and considered a potential running mate to Harris if she wins the party's presidential nominee. During a stop in Philadelphia earlier this month, Harris called Shapiro a great partner to the president and me. CNN also previously reported that former President Barack Obama told Shapiro directly that he's among the 2022 generation of Democrats who who need to have a voice in the future of the party, according to a person close with the conversation. Shapiro endorsed Harris on last Sunday, calling her a patriot worthy of our support. And then, of course, it would be unfair to bring up Shapiro without mentioning the events that happened 2 weeks ago in Pennsylvania surrounding President Trump. And Shapiro gave his response, obviously, in an address about the event, and specifically about Corey Comparatori, the father who unfortunately lost his life at the event. His speech, where he said, Corey was a girl dad, Corey was a firefighter, Corey went to church every Sunday, Corey loved his community, Shapiro said at a news conference a day after the event, and most especially, Corey loved his family. So he showed in that situation his ability to be like a leader in the crisis. And I'm not trying to like pump up Shapiro. I'm not doing this because I have my own personal interest or something in this. I'm doing this objectively as who I think would be the best candidate for Harris. Because I think Shapiro adds something to Harris's campaign that is a very, very worthy asset, which is he has an appeal, given his approval ratings, to get independent voters, and that is something that's going to be absolutely crucial in Pennsylvania. And he's the governor of the most important swing state, a state that if Harris wins this election, it's very likely she's going to win that state. So, with respect to Walz, Minnesota is going to go Democrat anyway. There's not really a value there of Harris picking him. And Senator Mark Kelly, he's certainly a good choice, and he may be able to help with moderate Democrats, but in my view, or moderate Republicans and independents and Democrats, but there's a chance that Harris chooses Mark Kelly in Arizona, and Trump still finds a way to win the state. I'm not saying that will happen, but it's certainly possible. Shapiro being on the ticket with Harris, I think, moves the needle in Pennsylvania more than Kelly does in Arizona. So of these three, if it is going to be one of these three, which is what the poll suggests, I personally think Shapiro would be the stronger of the three candidates and would have the best shot at winning the election, defeating Donald Trump. And I can't talk about this enough that as a Republican, you should be really scared if Shapiro is the Democrat that Harris chooses. Because I think, at very least, it gives Pennsylvania to Harris right now. Even if it only swings the state 1 or 2 percentage points, it either makes Pennsylvania a tie or Harris is leading the state. Or it'll come very close down to the wire where Pennsylvania may end up going blue. If that's the case, if Pennsylvania is going blue, Trump can still win the election, but it's going to be a lot tougher without Pennsylvania in his column. Which is why I think Shapiro is honestly the perfect candidate for Harris to choose. And as a Democrat, if you're a Democrat, you want Harris to choose Shapiro, in my opinion. I think you'd be the best candidate for her to choose. And as a Republican supporter, you definitely would prefer that it be Walz or Kelly over Shapiro, because the state of Pennsylvania is so important to both of their pathways to victory that it would not be a good thing for Trump for Shapiro to be the Democratic nominee. Of course, this gets into a bigger discussion about how important the VP overall is in getting votes and gathering votes out. There's debates about this, about how effective they really are. I think the governor of Pennsylvania, a state that's going to be in the news for the next 3 months a lot, would definitely move the needle a little bit, especially when he's that well approved of. So that'll do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel so you get notified when I post videos like this. Thank you so much for watching and hope to see you in a future video.